The morning sun cast long shadows across the New Eden colony as children from 12 different species gathered in the school courtyard. Human children played alongside young Zeltharians with their blue-scaled skin, while Morthic youngsters used their forearms to juggle colorful balls. The air filled with laughter that sounded the same no matter what language it came from. Sarah Chun, the colony's education director, watched the cultural exchange with pride. 2 years ago, humans had been the newest species to join the galactic community. Most other races saw them as weak and primitive. But here on New Eden, they had built something special. A place where different species could live together in peace. Miss Chun called out Tommy, a 8-year-old human boy. "Look what Crix taught me." He held up a small crystal that glowed with soft light. His Krithax friend, a reptilian child with silver scales, clicked his teeth in what humans had learned was their version of a smile. "That's wonderful, Tommy," Sarah said, ruffling his hair. "But remember, the presentation starts in 10 minutes. Everyone needs to get ready." The children ran toward the school building, their excited voices mixing together. Today, they would show their families how much they had learned about each other's cultures. Parents and guardians from across the galaxy had come to watch. Even the strict Krithax adults seemed pleased to see their young ones making friends. High above the planet, Commander Vex of the Krithax Empire studied the colony through his ship's sensors. The humans had been warned 3 times to leave this world. The minerals here belonged to the Empire by right of conquest. They had claimed this sector 50 years before humans had even learned to leave their own star system. "Sir," his lieutenant said, "the humans have not responded to our final warning. They continue to mine the restricted areas." Vex's clawed hand drummed against his command chair. The Krithax Empire ruled over 47 star systems. They had crushed rebellions and conquered entire species. These humans thought they could ignore the Empire's commands just because they were new to space. "They need to learn respect," Vex growled. "But we must be careful not to start a war." The Galactic Council would not approve. "What are your orders, sir?" the lieutenant asked. Vex looked at the colony below. The humans valued their young above all else. Every species did. A small demonstration of force at their school would send the right message. Show them that the Empire could reach anyone, anywhere. "Target the education facility," Vex ordered. A precision strike. Kill enough to make them understand, but not so many that other species will call it genocide. The lieutenant paused. "Sir, there are children from many species down there. Not just humans." "Even better," Vex said. "Let the galaxy see what happens to those who harbor rebels." In the school assembly hall, 400 children sat in neat rows. Human children had painted their faces with the traditional patterns of other species. Alien children wore human clothes and tried to speak English words. The parents in the viewing area smiled and took pictures. Tommy stood at the front of the stage with his friend Crix. They had prepared a song together, mixing human melodies with Krithax harmonic sounds. As they began to sing, their voices blended in a way that made the adults in the audience wipe away tears. Sarah Chung stood at the side of the stage, watching her students perform. This was what the future looked like. Different species learning from each other, growing together. Maybe the older generation of aliens thought humans were weak, but these children would grow up knowing better. Shadow passed over the windows. Sarah looked up to see massive Krithax warships descending through the clouds. Her blood turned cold. She had seen ships like these in the war documentaries. They were not here for peace talks. "Everyone stay calm," she announced, trying to keep her voice steady. "Teachers, please move the children to the emergency shelters." But it was too late. The energy beam struck the school with surgical precision. The main hall where all the children had gathered exploded in a flash of superheated gas. The walls vaporized. The roof collapsed. In 3 seconds, 400 young lives ended. The Krithak ships hovered over the burning ruins for a moment, then disappeared into hyperspace as quickly as they had come. Sarah Chun was found 6 hours later, buried under rubble, her body shielding 3 human children who had not made it to safety. She died holding them, whispering that everything would be okay. Across the colony, survivors stumbled through the wreckage. The precision of the attack was clear. Only the school had been targeted. The message was obvious: surrender or watch more children die. Commander Vex sat in his command chair as his ship jumped to hyperspace. The operation had been clean and efficient. 400 dead, mostly children. The humans would surrender within the day. No species could endure watching their young die. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving messages from the human government. Excellent, Vex said. Patch me through to their leaders. I will accept their surrender personally. But the communications officer looked confused. Sir, there are no surrender offers. In fact, we're not receiving any messages at all. Every human communication channel has gone silent. Vex frowned. What do you mean silent? I mean completely silent, sir. No diplomatic messages, no military communications, no civilian broadcasts. It's like the entire human government just stopped talking. For the first time since the attack, Vex felt a small chill of unease. In 40 years of conquest, he had never seen a species react to defeat with total silence. They always begged, or threatened, or tried to negotiate, but the humans had simply gone quiet. On Earth, in the deepest levels of the Human Defense Command, ancient computers that had slept since humanity's last global war suddenly came online. Old protocols, written in the darkest days of human history, began to execute. Across human space, every military installation received the same coded message. The children were dead. The enemy had been identified, and humanity was no longer pretending to be civilized. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so tense. Representatives from 46 species sat in their assigned seats, but all eyes were on the empty chair reserved for humanity. For 3 days, no human representative had appeared. No messages had been sent. The newest member of the galactic community had simply vanished from all diplomatic channels. Ambassador Threx of the Zeltharian Republic tapped his clawed fingers nervously on his desk. Has anyone heard from Earth? Anything at all? Nothing, replied the Morthic delegate, all 4 of her arms spread in confusion. Our trade ships report that human spaceports are closed. No one gets in or out. Chancellor Gornix, the ancient leader of the Altarian Federation, stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps they are simply mourning their dead. The Krithak's attack was unfortunate. Unfortunate? The voice belonged to Ambassador Yith of the Centauri Alliance. 400 children were murdered in cold blood. The humans have every right to be upset. From the highest tier of seats, Commander Vex of the Krithak's Empire looked down at the assembly with contempt. The humans were warned repeatedly to abandon their illegal colony. They chose to ignore the Empire's rightful claim to that system. What happened was a natural consequence of their stubbornness. Natural consequence? Yith stood up, his blue skin flushing darker with anger. You killed children, Vex. Children from a dozen different species. How is that natural? Vex's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Children learn by watching adults. Those children learned that defying the Empire has consequences. Now their parents will make wiser choices. Before anyone could respond, the great doors of the chamber opened. A single human figure walked in, wearing the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. But something was different about her. Her steps were too precise. Her eyes were too cold. When she reached the human delegation seat, she didn't sit down. She simply stood there, hands behind her back, and waited. Ambassador Martinez, Chancellor Gornick said carefully, "We've been trying to reach your government for 3 days. The Council wishes to express our condolences for your tragic loss." "Thank you," Martinez replied. Her voice was perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. Too controlled. "The Prime Minister has asked me to deliver a message to this assembly." She pulled out a small datapad and began to read. "To the Galactic Council and all member species. The Krithax Empire has committed an act of unprovoked genocide against human children and the children of our allies. As of this moment, the human species formally declares its intention to completely erase the Krithax Empire from existence." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Vex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "Erase us? You primitives have been in space for barely 2 years. We have ruled this galaxy for 5 centuries. Martinez looked directly at him. "The human government estimates that complete elimination of your species will require approximately 6 months. We will begin immediately." "This is insane," Threx said, rising from his seat. "Ambassador Martinez, surely your government doesn't mean literal genocide. The humans are peaceful. Everyone knows this." "We were peaceful," Martinez said simply. "We chose to be peaceful. But we have other options." Chancellor Gornix leaned forward. "Ambassador, I urge your species to reconsider. The Galactic Council can arrange reparations, territory concessions, even punishment for those responsible. But total war between spacefaring species benefits no one." "There will be no war," Martinez said. "War implies 2 sides fighting. This will be an extermination." Commander Vex stood up, his massive frame towering over the assembly. "Enough of this theater. Humans, you forget your place. Your entire fleet consists of maybe 100 ships. The Empire has 10,000. Martinez finally smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Commander Vex, your intelligence reports are outdated. Earth's Fleet Command wishes me to inform you that as of this morning, your empire consists of 7,847 ships. We destroyed 53 of your patrol vessels while you were sitting in this chamber making threats." The silence that followed was absolute. Vex's scaled face turned pale. "That's impossible. Our ships are scattered across 47 systems. You couldn't have coordinated attacks on 44 systems," Martinez corrected. "We've already sterilized 3 of your mining colonies. No survivors." Yith's voice was barely a whisper. How could you possibly move that fast?" Martinez turned to address the entire assembly. "The human species has been preparing for galactic conflicts since before we achieved faster-than-light travel. What you saw in our first years among the stars was not our capability. It was our restraint." She gestured to the viewing screen at the front of the chamber. Images appeared showing sleek human warships emerging from hyperspace around Krithax positions. The ships moved with impossible coordination, like parts of a single vast organism. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, turning Krithax vessels into expanding clouds of vapor. "For 2 years, we studied every species in this galaxy," Martinez continued. "We learned your strengths, your weaknesses, your technologies, your military doctrines. We prepared contingency plans for war with each of you individually and all of you together." The images on the screen changed. Now they showed human cyber warfare teams infiltrating Krithax computer networks. Massive data repositories flickered and vanished as millennia of Krithax culture and technology were systematically deleted. "We are not just destroying their ships," Martinez explained. "We are erasing their entire civilization. Their art, their literature, their scientific research, their historical records. When we are finished, it will be as if the Krithax never existed." Threx found his voice first. "This is monstrous. You're talking about genocide on an unimaginable scale." "Yes," Martinez agreed. and we will complete it in 6 months, just as I promised. Vex's bravado had completely disappeared. This is madness. You cannot simply erase an entire species because of one military action. Martinez looked at him with eyes that held no warmth at all. Commander, you killed children. Our children. The children of our friends. You did it deliberately to send a message. She paused. We are sending a message back. Chancellor Gornick stood up slowly. Ambassador, surely there must be some way to resolve this peacefully. The Krithaks could pay reparations, submit to council justice, make amends. No, Martinez said simply. The time for justice has passed. The time for mercy has passed. All that remains is extinction. She turned to leave, then stopped at the chamber doors. The Prime Minister wishes me to inform the Council that any species that interferes with this operation will be considered an enemy of humanity. We will respond accordingly. As the doors closed behind her, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. For the first time in galactic history, a species had declared not just war, but total extermination against another spacefaring civilization. And from what they had just seen, humanity had the capability to carry out their threat. Commander Vex slumped in his chair, his scaled hands shaking. Somewhere in the depths of space, the human war machine was already moving. Ships that shouldn't exist were hunting his people with impossible precision. In trying to teach humanity about power, he had awakened something that made the Empire's worst tyrants look like children playing with toys. That the humans weren't just angry. They weren't just seeking revenge. They had become something else entirely. Something that didn't negotiate with child killers. Something that simply erased them. Admiral Sarah Chung stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Krithaks-held Vorthan system. She was the sister of the teacher who had died protecting human children on New Eden, the Earth. Fleet Command had given her the honor of leading the first major offensive. Sensor report, she ordered. Her voice steady despite the storm of grief and rage burning in her chest. 17 Krithaks warships in defensive formation around the third planet, came the reply from her tactical officer. 3 orbital stations, multiple ground installations. Estimated total population, 42 million Krithaks. Estimated human population? Chun asked. 0, Admiral. This is a pure Krithaks military system. Chun nodded. Signal the fleet. Begin total sterilization protocol. No warnings, no surrender offers. Complete elimination. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the cold efficiency that had characterized all human military operations since the attack on New Eden. These weren't the same humans who had joined the Galactic community 2 years ago with hopes of peace and friendship. Something fundamental had changed in their species. The human fleet consisted of ships that shouldn't have existed. While humanity had been playing the role of peaceful newcomers, their military engineers had been working in secret. Vessels that looked like ordinary transport ships suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems that outclassed anything in the known galaxy. Admiral, her weapons officer reported, all ships ready to fire. Quantum disruptors charged, nanite swarms loaded, reality warpers standing by. The Krithak ships had detected the human fleet and were moving to intercept. Their formation was perfect, their tactics proven over centuries of conquest. They had every advantage except one. They were fighting an enemy that no longer cared about rules. Fire, Chun said simply. The space between the fleets erupted in weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human quantum disruptors didn't just destroy matter. They unraveled the fundamental forces holding atoms together. Krithak ships didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind clouds of component particles. The nanite swarms were worse. Microscopic machines programmed with a single purpose: find Krithak's DNA and destroy it. They could eat through ship hulls, protective suits, even sealed bunkers. Once released, they would continue hunting until every trace of Krithak's genetic material in the system was gone. Enemy fleet destroyed, the tactical officer reported. Beginning planetary bombardment. On the planet below, Krithak's military commanders watched their orbital defenses vanish in moments. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication networks as civilians tried to evacuate cities. But there was nowhere to run. Human ships had surrounded the entire system. Ground Marshal Keth had fought in 12 wars for the Empire. He had seen orbital bombardments before, watched cities burn under enemy fire. But this was different. The human weapons weren't just destroying buildings. They were rewriting the planet's molecular structure. "Sir," his communications officer said, voice shaking, "we're receiving surrender offers from 6 different military districts. They want to know if the humans will accept." "No," Keth said quietly. "They won't accept anything. Look at their attack pattern." On the tactical display, human ships moved with perfect coordination. They weren't targeting military installations first, as any rational army would. They were systematically destroying everything: schools, hospitals, museums, data centers. They were erasing Krithak's civilization itself. "They're not trying to conquer us," Keth realized. "They're trying to make us disappear." In orbit around the planet, specialized human ships began their most horrifying work. These were the data hunters, vessels equipped with quantum computers, capable of infiltrating any information system ever built. They hacked into the planet's networks and began deleting everything. Every book, every song, every scientific formula. Every piece of art the Krithaks had ever created, all of it vanished into digital oblivion. Centuries of culture and knowledge disappeared as if it had never existed. Dr. Yalith, the planet's chief archivist, watched in horror as her life's work was destroyed. The central data core contained 50,000 years of Krithak's history. Poetry that had inspired billions, scientific discoveries that advanced their civilization, philosophical works that had shaped their society. All of it was being systematically deleted by human cyber warfare specialists, who worked with the dedication of machines and the fury of grieving. "Parents, they're taking everything," she whispered to her assistant. "Not just our present, but our past. Our entire cultural identity." On distant worlds throughout the galaxy, other species watched the destruction with growing horror. The humans weren't just waging war. They were committing what could only be called cultural genocide on a scale never before seen. Ambassador Threx of the Zeltharian Republic called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "We must intervene," he declared. "This has gone beyond revenge. The humans are destroying an entire civilization." But when the Council tried to contact the human government, they received only automated responses. Earth's diplomatic corps had been replaced by military liaisons who spoke in the cold, precise language of war. "The human species is currently engaged in a necessary extermination operation," came the standard reply. "This operation will continue until completed. Any interference will be treated as an act of war against humanity." Meanwhile, Admiral Chun watched as her fleet completed its work in the Vorthan system. The planet below was now a lifeless ball of rock. 42 million Krithaks had been eliminated, and with them, an irreplaceable piece of their species' heritage. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving reports from other task forces. Fleet Group Delta has finished with the Nexer system. Fleet Group Gamma is beginning operations in the Kelphin sector." Chun nodded. Across Krithak space, dozens of human fleets were conducting identical operations. Each group moved with the same ruthless efficiency, the same complete lack of mercy. They had divided the enemy empire into sections and were systematically working through each one. What about survivors? She asked. None, Admiral. Standing orders are total elimination. No prisoners, no refugees, no exceptions. Chun felt a brief moment of something that might have been doubt. 42 million beings had just died because of her order. Once, before New Eden, that number would have horrified her. But now she thought of Tommy and the other children, and the doubt vanished. Signal Fleet Command, she ordered. Vorthen system sterilization complete. Moving to next target. As her ships jumped back into hyperspace, the Vorthen system was left empty and silent. The planets still orbited their star, but there was no trace that an advanced civilization had ever existed there. The humans had been thorough in their ERASU, RE. In the depths of space. Commander Vex's flagship received reports from across the Empire. System after system going silent. Fleets disappearing. Entire worlds becoming empty and lifeless. The humans weren't just winning. They were achieving something that had never been done in galactic history. The complete extinction of a spacefaring species. How many ships have we lost? He asked his tactical officer. Approximately 3,000, sir. But that's not the worst part. What could be worse than losing half our fleet? Sir, we've lost contact with 18 home worlds. Complete communication blackout. Long-range sensors show. The officer paused, checking his readings again. Sir, the sensors show those systems are empty. No life signs, no energy signatures, no artificial structures. It's like our people were never there. Vex stared at the tactical display, watching red marks appear where Krithak's systems used to be. Each mark represented millions of his people. Civilians who had nothing to do with the attack on New Eden. Scientists, artists, children who had never heard of humans before this war began. All gone. All erased as completely as if they had never existed, for the first time in his long military career. Commander Vex understood what it meant to face an enemy that fought not for territory or resources or political advantage, but for something far more terrible, the absolute destruction of everything you were, everything you had been, and everything you might have become. The Krithak's homeworld of Thizes had never known fear like this. For 500 years, it had been the shining center of an empire that spanned 47 star systems. Its crystalline spires reached toward the heavens. Its vast cities housed billions of beings. And its orbital defense platforms were said to be impregnable. Now those platforms were burning wreckage. And the human fleet hung in space like harbingers of the end of everything. Emperor Zarthak stood in his palace's highest tower, watching human ships descend through the atmosphere. He was ancient even by Krithak's standards, having ruled for over 2 centuries. He had conquered species, crushed rebellions, and expanded his empire across the galaxy. But he had never faced anything like this. My Emperor, his chief advisor said, bowing deeply, the High Command is requesting permission to surrender. Perhaps if we offer full reparations, territory concessions, even the heads of those responsible for the attack. Do you truly believe they will listen? Zarthak asked, his voice heavy with the weight of watching his civilization die. Before his advisor could answer, every communication device in the palace activated simultaneously. The face that appeared was human, but it might as well have been carved from stone. General Harrison, Supreme Commander of the Human Expeditionary Force, looked out at them with eyes that held no warmth, no mercy, no possibility of negotiation. I am addressing the leadership of the Krithak's Empire, Harrison said. You have 48 hours to broadcast your complete and total surrender to every remaining Krithak's world. This is not a negotiation. This is an opportunity for you to die with the knowledge that your species chose to submit rather than resist to the end. Emperor Zarthak stepped forward. General Harrison, I am prepared to discuss terms. The attack on your colony world was the action of a single commander acting without authorization. The Empire is willing to pay any price for peace. Harrison's expression didn't change. There will be no peace, Emperor. There will be no reparations. There will be no survivors. You will surrender so that the galaxy knows your empire chose submission over defiance in its final hours. That is all. That is all. But surely, Zarthek said, desperation creeping into his voice, there must be some way to end this. We can give you technology, resources, territory. We can rebuild your colonies, compensate the families of the dead. The dead children cannot be compensated, Harrison replied. They cannot be rebuilt. They cannot be brought back. And so neither can your species. The transmission ended, leaving the palace in silence. Within hours, surrender broadcasts began emanating from the Krithak's homeworld. Military commanders laid down their arms. Civilian leaders pleaded for mercy. Entire populations gathered in public squares, kneeling in submission to the human forces above. It didn't matter. The humans had not come to accept surrender. They had come to finish what they started. Admiral Chun, now commanding the final assault on the Krithak's homeworld, received the surrender broadcasts with the same cold indifference she had shown throughout the campaign. Tactical. How many Krithaks remain in this system? Approximately 8 billion, Admiral. Spread across the homeworld and 6 moon colonies. And our timeline for complete sterilization? 18 hours for the moons, 36 for the planet itself. The population density requires more thorough work. Chun nodded. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for the largest single act of genocide in galactic history. Ships designed specifically for planetary extinction moved into position. These weren't warships in any traditional sense. They were tools of complete biological warfare, carrying weapons that could sterilize entire continents in minutes. On the surface below, Krithak's families gathered in their homes, holding each other as the shadow of human ships passed overhead. They had heard the reports from other worlds. They knew what was coming. But something about being present for the end of their entire species made the reality too. Large to comprehend. Young Krithaks named Sith held her infant brother in her arms as her family huddled in their underground shelter. Above them, the sky filled with fire as human nanite swarms began their work. The nanites were programmed for one purpose: find Krithak's DNA and eliminate it at the molecular level. Will it hurt? Sif asked her mother. Her mother stroked her scales gently. No, little one. It will be quick. She was wrong. The humans had designed their weapons to be thorough, not merciful. In space, representatives from every major galactic power had gathered to witness the extinction. Not to participate, not to interfere, but to watch and remember. The Galactic Council had declared the event a moment of historical significance that must be documented for future generations. Ambassador Yith of the Centauri Alliance stood on his ship's observation deck, recording everything. His hands shook as he watched human ships systematically destroying not just lives, but the entire concept of Krithak's existence. They're not just killing them, he whispered to his aide. They're erasing every trace that they ever existed. The art, the literature, the scientific discoveries. 500 years of spacefaring civilization, gone as if it never happened. On another ship, Chancellor Gornix of the Altarian Federation watched with the weight of history on his shoulders. This changes everything, he said to his advisors. The humans have shown that it's possible to completely eliminate a spacefaring species. Nothing in the galaxy will ever be the same. As the hours passed, the human fleet worked with mechanical precision. Moon by moon, continent by continent, city by city, the Krithak's empire was being erased from existence. The humans didn't just destroy. They sterilized. They purified. They left nothing that could grow back. Emperor Zarthak spent his final hours in his palace's archives, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of his people. Ancient texts, scientific discoveries, philosophical treatises, artistic masterpieces, all of it would be gone within hours. "My emperor," his aide said, "there's still time to evacuate. We could take the most important cultural artifacts, preserve something of our heritage." Zarthak shook his head. "Don't you understand? That's exactly what they want to prevent. They don't just want us dead. They want us forgotten. They want it to be as if we never existed at all." He picked up an ancient book of poetry, written by Krithak's philosophers centuries before they had achieved spaceflight. "This book contains the thoughts and dreams of 100 generations of my people. In an hour it will be ash. In a year, no one will remember that it ever existed." As the final human ships moved into position over the capital city, Zarthax broadcast one last message to the galaxy. "To any who hear this transmission, remember that the Krithax Empire existed. Remember that we built great cities, created beautiful art, and loved our children just as any species does. Remember that we made a terrible mistake, and for that mistake, our entire civilization is being erased from history." The transmission ended just as the human orbital bombardment began. Admiral Chum watched the final phase of the operation from her flagship. Below, the capital city of Dazis, one of the most beautiful urban centers in the galaxy, dissolved under concentrated antimatter bombardment. Billions of years of evolution, millions of years of civilization, 5 centuries of star travel, all of it ending in moments of absolute destruction. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "that was the last populated center on the planet. All Krithak's life signs have been eliminated. Total mission time? 6 months, 2 days." Chum allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "Signal Fleet Command. The Krithax Empire is extinct. All objectives achieved." But even as she spoke those words, she knew that humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had proven that mercy was optional, that civilization was fragile, that if you threatened human children, an entire species could simply cease to exist. The galaxy would remember the Krithax Empire as a cautionary tale, and they would remember humanity as the species that had shown them all what true ruthlessness looked like when it wore the face of justice. 1 year after the extinction of the Krithax Empire, the Galactic Council chambers looked exactly the same as they always had. The same representatives sat in the same seats, conducting the same diplomatic business they had for centuries. But everything had changed in ways that could not be seen. Ambassador Martinez stood at the human delegation's podium, delivering a routine trade proposal with the same calm professionalism she had always shown. Her voice was pleasant, her manner diplomatic, her suggestions reasonable and fair. To a casual observer, she seemed like any other galactic diplomat going about ordinary business. The other delegates watched her with barely concealed terror. The human colonies in the Outer Rim would benefit greatly from increased trade with the Zeltharian Republic, Martinez was saying. "We propose a reduction in tariffs on agricultural products in exchange for preferential shipping rates." Ambassador Thrax nodded quickly. "Of course, Ambassador Martinez. The Zeltharian government would be honored to accept these terms. No negotiation necessary." Around the chamber, other delegates shifted nervously. In the old days, before the Krithax extinction, a trade proposal like this would have led to hours of debate. Now, every species rushed to accommodate human requests, no matter how minor. Chancellor Gornix cleared his throat. "If there's no other business, perhaps we should move to the next agenda item." "Actually," Martinez said pleasantly, "there is one more matter. The human government would like to address some concerns about child welfare standards in the mining colonies of the Outer Rim." The chamber fell completely silent. "We've received reports," Martinez continued in the same calm tone, "that some species are using juvenile labor in dangerous mining operations. While we understand that different cultures have different concepts of childhood, the human government feels strongly that certain universal standards should apply." Every delegate in the chamber knew what she was really saying. The last species to harm children in human-controlled space had been completely erased from existence. Not defeated, not conquered. Erased as if they had never existed at all. "Of course," Threk said quickly. "The Republic will immediately implement human-standard child protection laws across all our territories. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings." Martinez smiled warmly. "That's wonderful to hear. The human government deeply appreciates the Republic's commitment to child welfare." As the session ended, delegates filed out of the chamber in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. The subject they discussed was always the same: how to avoid becoming the next species that humanity decided to remove from the galaxy. In a private meeting room, Ambassador Yith of the Centauri Alliance met with several other diplomatic leaders. The topic of their discussion was one that occupied the thoughts of every government in known space. "The Terran survey data is complete," Yith said, sliding a data pad across the table. "Our intelligence services have been working for a year to understand what happened to the Krithax." Chancellor Gornix picked up the pad and scrolled through the findings. "What did you discover?" "The humans didn't just destroy Krithax ships and worlds," Yith said. "They erased every trace of their existence. Every database entry, every historical record, every mention of their culture in other species' archives. Most young beings today don't even know the Krithax ever existed." "That's impossible," said Ambassador Kelth of the Vorthan Confederacy. "You can't just delete an entire species from galactic history, can't you?" Yith asked. "When was the last time you heard anyone mention the Krithax Empire? When was the last time their territory appeared on a star map?" "The humans have been very thorough in their cultural erasure." The other delegates exchanged worried glances. It was true. In the years since the extinction, references to the Krithax had gradually disappeared from official records, educational materials, and even casual conversation. It was as if the galaxy had collectively agreed to forget they had ever existed. "What does this mean for the rest of us?" Gornix asked. Yith leaned forward. "It means we live in a galaxy where humanity has proven that extinction is possible. Complete, total extinction, not just of a species, but of their entire cultural legacy. They didn't just show us they could kill. They showed us they could erase the memory that we ever lived." Meanwhile, in a small restaurant on Earth, 3 human children played with toys that would have been unremarkable to any observer. But these toys told a story that the galaxy was still learning to understand. 8-year-old Emma pushed her toy spaceship around a playmat covered with planets and space stations. Her younger brother Marcus watched with wide eyes as she acted out space battles between good and evil forces. "And then," Emma said dramatically, "the bad aliens tried to hurt the children. So the good humans had to stop them forever." "Did they go to prison?" Marcus asked. Emma shook her head seriously. "No, they got erased. When you hurt children, you don't get to exist anymore. That's the rule." Their mother, Dr. Sarah Kim, watched from the kitchen as her children played out humanity's new place in the galactic order. She had been one of the xenobiologists who helped design the weapons that eliminated the Krithax. The work had been necessary, but she sometimes wondered what kind of galaxy they were creating for their children. On the wall of the restaurant hung a memorial plaque that read, "In memory of the children of New Eden Colony, who dreamed of a peaceful galaxy." Below it were the names of 400 young beings from 12 different species who had died, together in a school on a distant world. The plaque didn't mention the Krithax Empire. Most people who read it wouldn't know who had killed those children or what had happened to the killers. That information had been carefully scrubbed from public records, leaving only the memory of innocent lives lost and the clear understanding that such losses would not be tolerated. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Martinez was wrapping up her final meeting of the day. She had successfully negotiated 3 trade agreements, established 2 new diplomatic protocols, and reminded everyone present that human children were absolutely off-limits to any form of harm. As she gathered her materials, Chancellor Gornix approached her. "Ambassador, may I ask you something in confidence?" "Of course, Chancellor. What your species did to the Krithax. Do you ever wonder if it was too extreme? Complete extinction for the actions of a few military commanders." Martinez looked at him with the same pleasant expression she wore during all diplomatic exchanges. "Chancellor, my species learned something important from that tragedy. We learned that mercy is a luxury we can only afford when our children are safe. When they're not," she shrugged. "Well, you've seen what happens then. But surely there must have been another way. Sanctions, reparations, military action against specific targets." "There might have been," Martinez agreed. "But you have to understand something about humans. When someone threatens our young, we don't think about proportional responses or measured retaliation. We think about making sure it never, ever happens again." She paused at the chamber doors. "The galaxy is much safer for children now than it was a year ago. Every species in known space has implemented strict protections for juveniles. Child labor has been virtually eliminated. Educational standards have improved across 46 worlds. I would say the results speak for themselves." As she left, Gornix stood alone in the empty chamber, contemplating the new reality of galactic politics. Humanity had bought peace through the ultimate demonstration of power. They had shown every species in the galaxy what total war looked like when fought by beings who valued their children above everything else. The Krithax Empire was gone, so completely erased that most beings couldn't even remember their name. But their absence served as a permanent reminder of what happened to those who crossed certain lines in human space. Children played safely in schools that were now the most protected places in the galaxy. Alien species went out of their way to ensure that young humans felt welcome and safe in their territories. The diplomatic corps reported that child welfare had become the highest priority for every government that wanted to maintain peaceful relations with Earth. The message had been received by every intelligence agency, every military commander, and every political leader in known space. Human children are untouchable. Harm them, and your entire species will cease to exist. It was a simple rule that had created the most peaceful galaxy in recorded history. But underneath that peace lay the knowledge that humanity was not the innocent, peaceful species they had once appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. Loving parents who had the capability to end entire civilizations and a willingness to use it. The galaxy had learned to live with monsters who looked like angels and acted like diplomats, right up until the moment someone threatened what they loved most. Then the monsters showed their true face. An entire species simply disappeared.